Okay, diving deeper into the habits that I tend to use and make sure that I check off every day, even if it's only for 10 minutes. And it's more so being aware that we're doing them than checking them off. At first, we may have to actually check them off if our schedule doesn't include that, or if we're not as aware of it. But the seven habits are necessities, play slash rest, body slash self care, giving and receiving, create, um, education, and spirituality and breath. So these are the seven things that I make sure to include in every single day or to observe in every single thing that I do, right? Because everything is contained in everything. Every part of the universe is contained within us. Every part of the universe is contained within itself as a fractal. So it's all fragments of the same thing. So all these principles are the same thing. We should be able to see them in everything. A truth is being able to take one principle from one focus and switch to a different focus and let those principles still be true. That's what makes it a true principle. It's what makes it a law. So necessities, we went over most of that in the last video. Necessities is cause and effect. It's self-awareness. It is the foundational part of what everything is built on. It is correlated with the root chakra, where we can go through those paradigms, and we'll talk more on the chakra system later. Next is play rest. Play and rest is if you are completely depleted, the first thing you need to do is rest, then move your body, moving your body moderately. If you're completely depleted, you don't want to get a crushing workout. You want to do some gentle movement, maybe 10 minutes. And then as the time goes on, you'll see that that gentle movement ends up building your energy and you can take it into more aggressive movement. This is the said principle, specific adaptation to impose demands. We're going to be able to build upon those things more and more once we get prepared for it. It's the same thing with money. As we are prepared to have more money, we will resonate with the vibration of it and it will be given to us in some fashion. Body self-care after play rest. Body self-care would be working out, right? So play rest, any kind of play, going back to play rest, the play doesn't have to be movement. The play can be sitting with your kids and playing board games. It could be a hobby that you would like. But the first thing would be to rest if you're very depleted, then play and go through it that way. Body self-care then becomes body self-care. It becomes the physical attribute that will allow your energetic body to really light back up, to light that fire back up, Tejas, right? So that body self-care doesn't only include working out, it includes nutrition, right? Vedic nutrition is awesome. Even though I am a meat eater, I still apply a lot of Vedic nutrition to myself. It's Ayurveda would be the what you would look for if you're going to do that. I'm an AWC, an Ayurvedic wellness counselor, so I end up using a lot of that, and I mix it with what I've learned in Western nutrition, I'll say, but I combine the two with sports nutrition and Ayurvedic nutrition to find what works best for me. And everybody's going to be a little bit different. So there's a lot of people out there that are saying, don't eat these, don't eat that, don't eat this, don't eat that. Take it all with a grain of salt. Like you have time to explore. Most of us have time to explore and see what feels good for our body. I'm a big fan of fasting protocols, but if you're going to fast, especially ladies out there, make sure that you have done your research on fasting so that you can do it in a healthy way. So body self-care, that would end up being the principle of rhythm, which we'll get into later. Next is giving and receiving. So giving and receiving is a really interesting one because what happens with most of us is we tend to give expecting to receive from the first same person we give to. Um, which that's rarely the case, right? Giving and receiving has the caveat of giving with no expectations to receive anything from that person, not even a thank you. Um, and receiving would be receiving well. If somebody gives you something, not being like, oh, you really don't have to. No, I don't deserve this, because you're telling your subconscious that you don't deserve this. Receiving well, thank you, that was so thoughtful, and moving on, right? And being grateful without putting yourself down in the process. So giving and receiving well. Give without expecting return, receive without feeling like you owe, right? Which is a tough thing to do. It's easier said than done. A lot of times I still struggle with all of these, but it's helpful to become aware of it. Creation. So creating something. For me, I like what I do, right? So I create programs. Sometimes I'll draw, sometimes I'll write, and sometimes I'll just make lifting programs and videos. So creating, any type of creating, if you do pottery, if you're a builder, if you're a plumber, that's all creation. Recognize the creation in your work and then add to it with an external hobby or further education, something that you really enjoy doing that doesn't necessarily have to be monetary. But because when we do that, when we do it with a hobby, then we can start to see the creation in the work that we do. And then we have a greater love for our work. We have a greater respect for our work. We have a greater perspective of ourselves. Roofers, builders, most journeymen out there, like what they do is art. Yeah, they're taught it, but the way in which they do it, most of them, it's unique. And you'll see the ones that really take pride in their work versus the ones that don't. They're artists, and everybody is an artist in their own right. Whether you make the best spreadsheets, it's creation. Now it's helpful, like I said, to do creation with a hobby so that you can find the joy in creation first. Maybe even just making videos. I find that making videos is this really helps me open up my throat chakra. I've always had a tough time speaking, and this is something that has really helped me progress in that sense in my conversation. Next is education. And education, put education after creation because most of us have a harder time with creation, getting our mind around creation because we think that we don't know enough. And that's rarely, if ever, the case. We just know it so well that we don't think it's valuable information to share because it's almost like we expect everybody to know what we know. Whereas education, we're just adding to that, right? So education, it can be in anything. Again, when you're learning how to do something, when you're doing your hobby, when you're doing your creation, you may have a video, you may have to put on a video to learn how to do something. If you're learning to solder, if you're learning to lift weights, if you're learning a new move in a sport, if you're learning to draw a different part of the body, you're learning to do these things and you're creating at the same time. So you will have spillover where you don't have to block a ton of time out, but paying attention to, once you learn that, you're like, oh, I just educated myself, right? So it gives you approval into the mind and it goes into the higher mind. It builds your self-esteem, and then you're also creating. And whether or not you like your creation is irrelevant, right? But you are creating. Eventually you will start to like your creations more and more, even when they don't come out how you thought they were going to come out. Finally, it's spirituality and breath. Spirituality and breath is linked to education as well, and physicality, because paying attention to our breath is the thing that connects our nervous system, our mind, and our body together. So it connects all us all, it yokes us, right? So that's why pranayama is such a big thing in yoga. When yoga means yoking, it's yoking the upper and lower realms so that we can move cohesively, we can move in a strong way. So the breath work could just be simply pausing to take some breaths and seeing how it affects your nervous system. It can also be spiritual study where we're learning different principles, like you're doing now, learning different principles in order to further your understanding And as we gain that knowledge, we gain with practice of those principles, which if they work for you or not, you're casting off and you're keeping some. So what I've done over years is getting in a lot of thoughts and principles and then distilling them into the ones that I really agree with, that really resonate with me. And that's what creates your spirituality. So the knowledge and the breath yokes the mind and the body. And those would be the principles in a nutshell. I know it's a little bit more long-winded than I would like it to be, but I hope that gives you a better understanding of the habits that I use. And each one of those habits correlates to a principle, which we can go into in another video.